Let's just roll into it. So obviously I know, Rachel, your daughter was on a little while ago
Yeah.
and she's like, okay, you got to have dad on
My
to establish.
agent,
Yeah.
my agent.
Well, well, I wanted to start actually. Let's start here and then we'll go down the rabbit hole in a few areas
Okay.
because I know you're the quote unquote unstucker,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So here's my big question. Do people know that they're stuck?
People, yes, yes, people know they're stuck. They don't know necessarily why they're stuck, but they know when they're stuck because they know when things flow and they know when things work. So it's kind of like, does somebody necessarily know if they're smart? Well, no, but they know what dumb is and they know they're not that. So they may not know how smart they are. So when somebody gets stuck, they'll kind of know it because um, something is not working in some area of their life. Something's not working. Their relationships aren't working. Their career's not working. Their physical fitness isn't working. Something's not working, and they know that because they're constantly reminded of the things that's not working.
Yeah. Well, I guess the reason I ask that is like because I think about my own life. Do you realize that you're stuck or just like you're in a frustrating moment in your life and like you know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
as far as like I'm gonna solve this pain, like there's this pain I have to solve
Right.
versus it's just a season of life. I'll pass
Yes.
it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What happens is it's sometimes we're in a groove and the things are just going on. It's amazing how quickly a groove can become a rut.
Mhm.
It's just like, just what happens is that like I call it the uh-oh. We're just kind of like life's just kind of moving along, and then stuff like one Tuesday at 3 o'clock for no reason. There's just this this isn't working.
Yeah.
Something's not happening the way I want it to happen. Something's not going on the way I want it to go on, and it's that. And where does it come from? I don't know. I mean, where the other sock goes in the dryer, I don't know where it comes from. It comes from. It comes. Sometimes it comes from like you can like not do something about something for a long period of time, but then there's all kinds of external things, like what people try to do when they're not getting what they want, and when they can't get started, they're oftentimes attempting to not participate in their own lives, and you
Mhm.
can't do that. It's like, well, I'm just not going to do today. Well, yeah, you are, because today's going to come and go whether you're involved in it or not. You can't opt out. It's like, I
Yeah.
just don't want to deal with that. Well, this is what we know. The natural order of things seems to be deterioration. Left unattended, things go worse. So, unfortunately, for people that don't want to do anything, there is no such thing as not doing anything. The decision not to do something is a passive decision to let things get worse. So, if I decide to not cut the grass in May, I'm not doing anything. When I come out in September, the grass is not going to be the same length. What's going to happen is the grass is going to grow. It's going to go to underneath the windows. Now somebody throws like garbage in the lawn, and then all of a sudden now I got rats, and then the snakes are eating the rats, and the mongoose is eating the snake, and all of a sudden I got a menagerie because I didn't quote do anything. You
Right.
know. So unfortunately, the decision not to do something is a passive decision to let things get worse, and that's not people's most favorite thing to realize, but it happens. I think that seems to be how it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to the kind of the conversation we had to lead off when we jumped on here was, about fitness. Like we see this a lot. No one gets 50 pounds overweight
Right.
just by out of the gate, right?
Yes.
There were some
Yeah.
excessive decisions over a long period of time.
Yes.
And maybe they were small, right?
Right.
That they didn't even think about.
Right. And the great thing is that fortunately, the amount of time it takes us to get in trouble, it doesn't take us that much time to get out of trouble. So, for example, if somebody's been smoking for 20 years, it doesn't take them 20 years to stop smoking. You can actually stop smoking like immediately. And by far the most effective way to stop smoking is cold turkey. The way you stop smoking, you stop smoking. And the way you start exercising, you start exercising. I mean, I wish it was a little more complicated, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, but the path though forward, though, that's
Yes,
where
yes,
that's where the challenge
yes.
is.
Change happens in an instant, but the steps leading up to change can take a protracted period of time. And a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they're kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. I mean, the advantage I have is they call me. I didn't call them, so obviously they've already determined there's an issue. It's whether
Yeah.
or not I can help them with it, but they've already decided that they're stuck somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the first step. I talk about in my compass framework is like you have to make a commitment
Yes, yes,
to the change.
yes. Yes.
right?
Yeah. And once you understand why something's important to you, you will figure out how. And to have so there's a whole school of thought that says reasons come first and ways come second. The analogy I use is that for those people that are listening that have children, so you go to the hospital and they give you this tiny little human and they say, take it home and don't kill it. And that's your job. You have no idea how to take care of a baby, but you are crystal clear as to why you need to take care of the baby. So you figure it out. And I don't know anything is more important than that.
Yeah.
So is when you have a very clear reason as to why this thing needs to change, well, then you'll find it's amazing how quote unquote opportunities will come along, and you'll get ideas. Is because the brain seems to operate on two levels. It either looks at things logistically or it looks at things conceptually. So when people say things like, I really need to do this. I should really get started on that. Um, I'm going to work on this. The brain has no idea what we're talking about. It's like, well, that's interesting. But when we basically say, I'm I'm going to go out and walk 3 times this week. Okay, now we're moving. Now we're moving. It, as a general rule, change is a process. And when you get stuck in change, it's normally because you focused on an event and lost sight of the process. So what happens is the brain likes novel. They're very attracted to different things. It's very interesting. So we'll get an idea. And it's like, this is great. So I'm going to, fill in the blank. Start writing that book. Lose 10 pounds, whatever it is, and we go right out of the gate, and it's like awesome. It's like this wasn't that hard. There's no big deal, and we start having some success. So we're going to walk every day for 20 minutes, and we do for the first week. And then the second week, we miss a day. But that's okay because we're still like, and then the third week, we miss 3 days. And by the fourth week, we're like, this doesn't work. So I tell people, if you're trying to get started and you want to keep going, nothing moves in a straight line. So, the brain likes what it likes because it knows it. It doesn't like it because it likes it. It likes the familiar because it has a model for it. So when we try a new behavior, the brain's like, what is that? I don't know that one. Now, here's the good news. If you give the brain new information over time, it's happy to change its model. The brain used to say an object heavier than this can't fly. So then it saw like hot air balloons and then dirigibles, and then it saw planes. And now it says, that's a man-made object heavier. They fly. Oh, I thought you said they did. Well, I got new information. So we keep giving ourselves new information about us, and then we can transform the model.
Is that why it's so important to not let's use the New Year's resolution,
Yes.
like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym for 2 hours
Right, exactly,
a day.
yeah, yeah, the
And
January jumpies, yeah,
so
January.
is that why it's important to really put like a small goal, really something out there,
Yeah,
or do you recommend something different?
yeah, New Year's Eve resolutions don't generally work because they're set because of an arbitrary date on a calendar.
Mhm.
It's like, "Ooh, like, now I'm motivated." Like, "Ooh, why weren't you 3 days ago?" "Ooh, because of January." I mean, if everybody that buys a gym membership actually showed up, they would violate all the fire codes.
Right,
But they know for 3 weeks, and then, they got their money for the year, and they're not
right,
coming back
yeah,
because that's an external kind of variable as to why you set the goal. There really wasn't anything intrinsic, except it just happened to be a date on the calendar. That's one of the reasons those things fall apart. I mean, do they fall apart for everybody? No, every technique works for somebody,
yeah,
but it's not a very compelling why,
yeah,
because it was January 1.
yeah, that's
Well,
true.
what about like April 4th? And really, I mean, so it's got you have to have there's got to be a compelling why. The why is the driver that when you know being that I'm an endurance athlete, I train all the time, and I have a very compelling why. And the why for me is always that I have a race schedule. So and
Mhm,
and they're not going to change the date, by the way, if I'm not ready. It's kind of
mhm,
like
right,
kind of like Christmas is going to be on December 25th every year.
right,
You're not going to push it back because I'm going to get the stuff done. It's just not
right,
how that's going to work.
yeah. Well, but to your point though, with the date, like the marathon or Ironman or these others, it's not just, "Oh, there's a date there, I'm gonna do it." You have a why behind why
You
you're
got a
stuck.
serious why. You got a
Yeah,
serious why.
there's a lot of training there.
It's like, yeah, this is not a joke. So one of the things I find that is so helpful, that I find athletes understand. Like athletes don't have as many opinions about what they're going to do as non-athletes do. I went out for a run. I went out for a run today. I didn't think about whether I wanted to. It's just what I need to do if I want to be ready for the 15th of June for the first race. So, and in addition to that, if I wanted to sit around and like whine about it, nobody cares. I'm not making a point.
Yeah,
Like, people like to explain a lot of times why they're not doing something. And, I don't ever want to be impolite, but, sometimes I have to figure out a way to tactfully say, it's not that nobody cares, but nobody cares.
yeah,
If I don't run today, it's not going to matter a whit to the rest of the world. So we're not making a point a lot of times
yeah.
by not doing something, you know.
I've always tried to figure this out, looking at my own life because I've always been athletic. I've been very competitive. We just finished the CrossFit Open. They run that every year, and like, 'cause I was thinking about this from like a business. Like, if I want to go into business with someone, it's going to be someone that's probably been an athlete
Mhm.
because I know they know that they have to show up on the days that maybe they
Yes.
don't feel like it.
Yes.
Have you ever, but maybe pondered this? Maybe you found an answer, but like I've never found an answer of like, is that something that you could build, or is this like one of these things like innate through environment when you were a kid, we just happen to learn and it's
Well, what
with
happens, what sports does what sports teaches people is that you have to do the work to get the results, because that's how athletics is. I mean, if you're not prepared, if you haven't practiced, if you haven't trained, you're not going to be able to produce. So athletes automatically know that if they want the result, they have to do the work. You don't have to explain that to them. So
yeah,
that's when they kind of get the butt in line a little bit there. They get more of the express lane out of the store than the long line. Because they're the 8 items or less. Because you don't have to explain that to them. So to your point, if you are going to go in business with somebody, and particularly if you have an athletic mindset, it's not that non-athletes don't have any concept of goals, but for athletics, it's so evident if you haven't. I
yeah,
mean, if you're not prepared, I mean, these long races I do, I mean, they're not a joke. I mean, you have to,
no,
I mean, some of these things are 17 hours. That's nothing to fool around with them. You have to be in really good shape. And so the goal is basically to say, if the why isn't strong enough, the why is so critical because the why is the driver. What the why allows you to do is to plow through objections. And so without a compelling why, if you get stuck or discouraged, it's kind of hard to basically regroup,
yeah,
because it's like. And the other thing I think is really problematic is if somebody else has set the goal for you. It's
mhm,
really hard to get started on something that somebody thinks you should do. Because people
yeah,
come into our lives and without meaning to, they're saying, so I, who have never been you for a day in my life, think you, who's not me, should do that.
yeah,
And the person's like, so you think I should like run a 10K? Well, I don't like to run. So how am I going to get up in the morning? Because your legs don't have to go do it.
yeah.
So, it's really, and that's one of the things that really makes getting started hard, is when we think we're supposed to, we think other people expect it of us, or, there's some narrative we bought into.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other conversation because there are a lot of people that do things because other people
Yes.
suggest or want them
Yeah.
to instead of, I mean, I felt like for a lot of my childhood and into early adult life, I made a lot of decisions like kind of in the wind, finger in the
Hmm.
air, like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that looks cool," or someone else suggested it, and I
Yeah.
kind of did that
Yeah.
versus what I call taking control
Hmm. Yeah.
decisions,
And there's
like,
and there's certain things that we don't. They're almost off camera, and we don't even know.
mhm,
Like the house that I grew up in, my dad went to work and my mom stayed home. So I nobody said this to me ever. I assumed I was supposed to earn a living and take care of my family. Nobody told me that. That was I didn't do it because of that. That was already baked in. I didn't know it was baked in. It was just like part of like what it was I was doing, that I
right.
thought that's something I was supposed to do. So
Well, I know you and I both have the background of being a paper carrier, and
yes.
but I think about that even, like, no one told me I had to get a job when I was,
Mhm.
11 or 12, but I knew my why at that time was I need to make money so I can buy, like, golf clubs and other,
Correct.
games and all that stuff, right? And
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
kind of the
I was the same way. I thought, you know what, I have an allowance, but that's not going to cut it. And if I want, so I have to start this little empire here if I want to do what I want to do. But kids are great because kids spend so much time um, not having to worry about how it's going to happen. They just come up with an idea and they just go. There's not,
yeah,
adults are so good at creating these bureaucracies in their head, these 88 steps. Oh,
right.
it's really going to be difficult. And I'll say to people, well, what if it's not? Like, what if that's not true? Like, what if well, it's going to take a long time. Well, what if it doesn't? Like, what if that's not, maybe?
Well, that's the thing. We easily can come up with the
Oh
excuses
my
of
gosh,
why it's not gonna
oh
work,
yeah.
but we have a hard time I struggle with this a ton is, like, I have a hard time with the positive. I'm like, "Oh, yeah,
Yes,
it's gonna work out. It's gonna be
yes.
great."
And I think part of what it is we go as far as our fears let us. And our fears are almost always about the perceived future. And it's a story we make up in our head. And we extrapolate like 15 steps. Well, if I do this and I do that and then I do that and I do this and I do this and I remember working with an attorney and he said, so, I have to get this job and so we started going. So if you don't have the job, what's going to happen to you? Well, if I don't have a job, eventually I won't pay my mortgage. Well, if you don't pay a mortgage, well, eventually, like I'll lose my house, and then what will happen? Well, then I'll be living out of my car, and then what happened? Well, then my wife and kids will leave me, and then I'll be living under a bridge. I said, so if that guy doesn't answer your phone call today, he'll be under a bridge. I'm like, that's a leap and a half, man. And reality simply cannot match our imagination because it is boundless. I mean, and we come up with some whoppers. I mean, and in the absence of not knowing, the brain has a negativity bias, but for other reasons, without knowing, we'll almost inevitably make up something bad. And I'll say to people, why don't you make up something good? That may not be true either, but at least it feels better. Like, what if it doesn't work? What if it does? I mean, it's like,
Is that a protective instinct then?
part of it's a protective instinct because when we were wandering the savannah and we saw that bush out in the distance moving around, we had two options. One is that's a tiger and we need to stay away, or other it's the wind. Well, if we're looking for lunch and we're wrong, we are lunch. So the first thing we say is, I'm going to assume negative first.
Mhm.
And now, is that necessary? No, because we're not going to get eaten. I mean, it was a survival mechanism. We just didn't turn off the switch. So
Yeah.
there has to be a way of overcome that. And it's sort of like, well, what's the worst that'll happen? If I get started, the worst that'll happen is it won't work. Nobody's going to die. I mean, it doesn't work. And what do I do? Try something else. I mean, and if I've never done this thing my whole life, what's the worst will happen is I'll die and I never did it, but I'll die and I won't do most things. So like, so
True.
what, I find it harder for really smart people because they have smart people's disease. They can complicate tying their shoe if they're wearing a loafer. I mean, yeah, well, this happened, that, yeah, but it didn't. Yeah, but it might. Yeah, but it didn't. Yeah, but it could, but it won't. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so most of the things they did this really interesting study years ago. I don't know who did it, but it was really interesting. They found out that of the things we worry about, um, 50% of the time, nothing happens. I mean, it's a complete, we missed it, 100, like zero happened. Of the 50% where something does happen, 5% of the time, it's as bad as we thought it was going to be. And on occasion, it might actually be worse. So in the aggregate, it's 2.5%. So if I tell you, if you stand under that tree, there's a 97.5% chance you get struck by lightning, you're moving because 97.5% isn't guaranteed, but it's like pretty close. So a lot of worry is an attempt to resolve something that doesn't exist. I mean, like we can worry about next Tuesday. We can't be in next Tuesday because it's not next Tuesday. So people spend a lot of time getting started sort of with this kind of preemptive, well, let me be prepared for all obstacles. You'll never get out of bed. You know, how do you start? You start. You do something. I mean, think about with the paper route. You did not go through an enormous amount of steps, write a white paper on them, present it to a committee. You just like did whatever you did first, second, and third, and just moved on. As a kid, you see opportunity, you just like jump on it. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I see what my son's doing now with his YouTube channel. It's mind blowing.
yeah, Yeah.
It's just amazing of how he's building that, and he's, he doesn't mind if he fails. He's trying things and just and tinkering. And I think that's one of these things I went through in my life was like this period of like not tinkering, like
Hmm.
not being curious
Hmm.
when I knew I was as a kid. But I think to your point, I had this fear of like,
Yes.
what am I going to look like? Something's going to go wrong. I'm going to make a bad choice.
Right.
And until I realized that's a bunch of BS, I was able to come back on the other side of it and find this kind of, newfound
Yeah.
curiosity and
Yeah.
imagination. But I think we struggle.
We do, and it's like, well, what if I fail? Well, it's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but like, it's okay. I mean, how do you make good decisions with experience? How do you experience make some bad decisions? If there's another way,
Yeah.
I mean, if people talk to me and they'll say, "How do you know this?" I said, "I just had longer to screw up than you have." That's
Yeah.
all.
Right. Right.
I just had a chance to make more oopses than you did.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being able to look at that, and it's helpful when you look at it to say, so what did I learn except that I didn't like that? I mean, we always learn that, well, that didn't work. What else did we learn? It's kind of like, well, we all have so much. There's only so much stress you can. It's only so much change you can handle in a compressed period of time, and that's a simplified definition of what stress is. And when people are getting started, one of the things they worry about a lot of times is how stressful is that going to be because it's going to be different. Because it's not going to, even if what I'm doing I don't like, I
Right.
don't want, and I want something better or more or less of, it's going to be different. And one of the things that happens is that sometimes we'll experience the stress, and everybody has. There's three things that affect stress. The first one's called the degree of the stressor. So losing a loved one is more stressful than losing your car keys, for example.
Mhm.
The second is time frames. And when people are getting started, one of the things that can really get them off track is either having no time frame, like, to infinity and beyond, or the time frame is so close that it causes them to sort of panic a little bit. And then the third thing is just people's innate ability to handle stress. Some people just get bothered less by things than other people do. And so you put all those things together, and that has a lot to do, I think, with why people not only get started, but actually stay with what they started to do. I think
Mm.
that those two things are very much related. And good things can cause stress, like babies being born can cause stress, and holidays can cause stress. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just normally there's a lot of stuff going on in a compressed period of time, and everybody has a capacity to handle so much of that, but you can't quantify. It's not like 6 for some person, 14 for somebody else, but
Right.
you'll know it. You'll know it. So if you're trying something new and you've just gotten started and it's getting stressful, so just back off.
Yeah.
You just back off. And then the other thing I think is really helpful is when you're trying to make the change and you don't know why you're doing something, I will often suggest to people when you're having that self talk in your head, preface your conversations with the truth is. So I'm not doing this for X, Y, and Z. The truth is, I'm not doing this for X, Y, and Z. There are times when I do not train. Why do I not train? The truth is, I don't want to that day. That's the truth. It's a lot of times the truth is not profound or deep. It's just and because and I don't know are way underused. Like we think we have to have like a really sophisticated reason. No, we don't. No, we don't. I mean, think about important things people do, like get married. Now we have to get married because they love each other, but a lot of reasons get married is because they want to. And why do people who can have children and want children have one child as opposed to 3 children or 2 children? Because, well, I think because is like way underutilized. I mean, I'm cool with that. Like because I
Yeah.
want to. And then why do I race? Because I want to. When will I
Yeah.
stop raising? When I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier. It makes it easier to sort of move toward whatever the goal is. I mean, you can say,
Well, I like the truth is,
yeah,
because that definitely frames it a
yes,
little
it
bit.
does. It
Like,
does.
you
It
have
does.
to, and you can't lie to yourself. Maybe you could,
No,
but it's
no,
really hard to.
no, because see, your brain, like the brain works for you. Like, it'll do what you tell it to do. Henry Ford is famous for saying, "Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right."
Yeah.
So if somebody says, "Me, this ain't going to work," I'm like, "Well, probably because you set a goal for it to not work." you know,
Yeah. That's
brain is
true.
very confused when we say something's not going to work and get upset when it doesn't work. The brain's like, "That's what you told me." You told me
Yeah.
it wasn't going to work. I did all the things to help you not get there, and now you're mad because you're not there. Like, yeah, but I wanted to be there. Well, maybe. So what the truth does is the truth cuts off all options for the brain except what the truth is,
Yeah.
and so it makes it a little bit. It's there's it's less movement, less steps. The easier you make it for anybody to do anything, the more likely they are to do it, no matter what it is. Why? Why is social media so addictive? Because algorithms make it a no. It's so easy to do it.
Mhm.
It's like
Right.
about as easy as can possibly. What you have to do, crank it up, look at it. The algorithm's like, we'll take it from here.
Well, there's a lot of self-sabotage, that I think with what we're talking about here is like you set some exorbitant like goal that you can't reach, or maybe even the time frame, like you said, it's like someone being like, I'm gonna write a book in 2 months. And it's like, Okay, how are you gonna do it though? Like,
Right.
plan that out, and I think we almost some people and then they're like, "Oh, I tried it, and it didn't work," and it's like, "What
Right.
did you try?" I think there's a lot of ways we self-sabotage.
Yeah, and it's helpful to say, so if I got the goal, if I wrote the book, then what good thing would happen? Then I would be famous. And then once you were famous, like what good thing would happen? And then oftentimes it'll come down, like for example, when people want to make more money, it's not like they want more pieces of paper with dead presidents pictures on it. That's not what they want, because it's normally just like a number that goes on a spreadsheet somewhere that you look at. We're not getting paid in pennies. It's not like we bathe in it or something, and so it's a number. What it means, I make more money, means if I make more money, then I'll be more reliable. Okay, if I'm more reliable, what does that mean? A lot of times it comes back to, well, then people will love me more and
Yeah.
people will accept me more. I mean, a lot of times that's exactly what's behind it, or I'll be happier. And then what will that mean? Well, it means I'll be getting something I don't get somewhere else. And then, as you age, one of the things that's helpful is that you begin to really get the message clear and clear. It's all about relationships. You
Yeah.
never saw a hearse pulling a U-Haul. You're not taking any of this stuff with you anywhere, and so you begin to learn. Well, it's just the quality of relationships, because that's it. I mean, if I'll tell people, um, I tell people, you get up in the morning and you have your health. I mean, generally speaking, you're healthy enough to get through the day, and you have at least one person who loves you that you love. You're in the bonus round. And it's not to say stop your whining, things could be worse. It's not that. It's to say you got a lot already. Now build on that. And those two things are most important. How do I know that? Because I will give you anything that your heart desires, anything in the world, but you got to trade me back one of those two for it. Nobody's making that trade. Got to give me your healthier relationship. You can have anything else you want. No. What are we really saying? And then a lot of times when we're getting started, what do we get started for, and what is it that we want, and why? What is it that we want? It's the whole issue sometimes of chasing success, and the ladder was leaned against the wrong wall,
Yeah, exactly.
and we got there, and it's like, well, that's that's great. I mean, that's what it is. That's it's like,
Well, we don't even I think that's I had this challenge because and I'm curious your thoughts because obviously as an entrepreneur as early in the,
yes,
childhood,
yes,
you went into teaching.
yes,
It's kind of like
yes,
well, let me ask you that first before I go on the monologue. Like because obviously you had this kind of entrepreneurial and obviously you've been doing this for what 40 years now with
yes.
with coaching and stuff. But that how did you decide to go into teaching? Like, were you not forced, but like, is that like, hey, this is what you
No, 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 no. So there were two reasons behind it. My grandmother was a teacher. My mom was a teacher,
Mhm.
and I went to I was a collegiate wrestler, and so my goal was I wanted to teach school and coach wrestling. So
Oh, okay.
there was a part behind it. But I had this. I ended up at an all girls private school, so they kind of put the kibosh on the wrestling. But you have these pivotal moments in your life, and mine came when I was 26 years old. I was standing in front of a group of 14-year-old girls who looked like they were about as comatose as you could get, talking about the Missouri Compromise at 8 o'clock in the morning. And a little voice in my head said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 40, but it's not going to be this. And then there was this very serendipitous kind of events that happened where it's the way I equate it is, imagine you had this interest in psychology and you heard about this guy Freud, but you didn't know he was Freud. You knew he was this guy, and you knew this guy Carl Jung, but you didn't know he was Carl Jung. You knew he was this guy, and you hung out with these guys. I literally, by just dumb luck, ended up with some of the best career minds in the world, and basically was able to redefine that part of my life. And I got so excited about that. I started the business. And initially, what I said is, I'm going to help people figure out what to do with the work part of their lives. And eventually, just through numbers of things happened. I was helping somebody and they couldn't look for work during the day because they had to work. And I said, well, that's a time management issue. I'm a teacher. I'll teach myself about time management. And the next thing you know, now I'm doing time management consulting. Well, then I found out, well, this person, that person, not about time, they don't communicate well. I got a wild hair about that. And I started with that. So all of a sudden I turned around one day and I'm like, you're a full service management consultant. These things just kind of built one after another. I always said I had an interest driven business. I found things that interested me and I figured out a way to make money doing them. And that was really what was behind it. The other big difference was, though, I started the business the first time when I was 27 and it failed. I hadn't done it long enough to know what I was doing, and it crashed and burned. And I took a couple of years and simply worked on my craft, and then relaunched it, and then I never looked back. But it wasn't I wasn't going to like stop.
Hmm.
It was a matter of when, not if. And I was going to do it because I knew at that point that I think I think the entrepreneur's disease is terminal. I think it can go in remission, but I don't think it's curable. And I mean, and if you're a person that wants to do what you want to do when you want to do it, the way you want to do it, I love organizations. I work for them. I think they're great. It's just not for me. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I didn't ask anybody if I could do this today. I
Yeah.
just show up. That works
Yeah.
really well. And the addition to that, my goal very early on was not to have a successful career. It was to have an effective life. And one of the things that allowed me to get started is I had this rule in my head, and my rule was if I wasn't in the meeting when they made the rule, it wasn't necessarily my rule. Now I'm not anti-rule. I mean, I stop on red and go on green. I mean, I'm not an anarchist. I mean, I agree with rules have value. But when I started the business, people said, you have to work 2 or 3 years, you don't make any money. I'm like, well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. I mean, I had business as a kid. I mean, we're not doing that. That's out. And also, you have to work 80 hours a week. I'm like, no, I got stuff to do. It's like, and I thought like 4 days a week was good because because I had things to do, and then when Rachel and her brother came along, and then 8 or 9 years later the caboose came along. It's like I wanted to be involved in my kids. Cal Ripken said something really important. He said, when your kids are little, they're a blank tape, and somebody is playing a message on that. Do you want it to be you or somebody else? Because if you want it to be you, you got to be around. You can't schedule quality time.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people and it's a very loving thing to be able to provide a roof over your child's head. So certainly there are families where people have to work a lot to be
Yeah.
able to just exist. But you can't schedule quality time.
Yeah.
It just happens. It just happens. So I think a lot of it is to have like, what is the point? I mean, I just happen to be fascinated with how healthy you can be as you age. I just think it's so interesting. I mean, I read about it, study about it, talk to people about it. It's just an interesting little thing. And I like being the human guinea pig. I mean, we don't know because they've only started doing longitudinal studies on baby boomers and they haven't gotten that old yet. So we don't know how long you can be really fit. We don't have any data. So who knows? I just
I thought I saw something if you live to like 2035, you're gonna live to like 150 years old or
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the truth is
I
behind
just
that.
read yesterday about the oldest speed skater. He's 95. He started when he was 86.
Oh, wow.
Like, go get him.
Wow, that's
Go get him. Go get him.
how did you, I wanna ask about that, and I know it was back in the day, times are a little different now, but, like, going from being a teacher to starting your own business, like, what was that transition like? Did you start kind of building some clients on the side during the summers, or did you quit
Yeah. So
cold
what I
turkey?
what I did is I went out and I did two things. I would do temporary work. Like I could, Baltimore's near a port. Get
Mhm.
up 5 o'clock in the morning and drive the cars off the boats. I mean,
Oh, wow.
and I would be done by work at like at 12 o'clock. I was on a mission. and there was no technology. So the way I got started is, they used to send like free samples of products in the mail, like a little tube of toothpaste or something.
Mhm.
So I went. What I did was I created this unofficial board of directors. I found these wise people to hang around with,
Yeah.
and so, um, a couple of them had their own business. I mean, the one guy I met, I said, "Why did you get started?" He said, "Well, I got started for life. One of the reasons is Jane Pauley used to be on the Today Show, and he said I had a crush on Jane Pauley, and I just wanted to sit across from her for 5 minutes. So I invented a field and wrote a book about it." And I'm listening to this guy, and I'm like, "That's making this up." And he goes, "No, turn on the Today Show at 5 minutes till 9 on Friday. I'm going to be on." He's the guy was on. I'm like, he's on my list. He's going to be on my board. And I
Right.
met all these knuckleheads, and I just said, because I figured out I knew how to do what I did by then, and I knew how to actually coach people and those kinds of things. I didn't need help with that, but I went through these principles of exclusion. I said, well, "What do you want to do?" Well, I want to have this business. I know the content I want to do. What else do you know? Well, I want to be successful. And what else do you know? Well, I'm kind of a little like off the wall. So what I need is off the wall successful consultants. So somebody would tell me about a consultant. Are they successful? They're kind of struggling. Are they successful? Yeah. Well, who are they? And then I talked to them. And the weirder they were, the more I liked them. And
Mm.
then I didn't listen to everything they said, but I listened to some of the things. And one of the things they told me right away was, you need to get into media. So media at the time was television, radio, magazines, and newspapers. So I'm like, "Why would anybody talk to me?" And they said, "Well, look at a sheet of newspaper. They have one rule: they can't write yesterday's news." So I actually prepared this little speech. "Hi, my name is Michael Bryant. I do this interesting thing. You'd like to talk to me?" And then I called the reporter. She answered the phone. I hung up. I'm like, "No, if you're going to get people to stretch, you got to go stretch." And so anyway, I finally got the nerve to tell her. She said, "Great. When do you want to meet?" So from that, I got very good at getting myself in the newspaper. I ended up
Yeah.
having a 4-page profile done on me in Inc. magazine. I got on radio, I got on television, and I got the word out. And I knew exactly how to do that because I just did it. That was the precursor of what would have been LinkedIn and podcasts and all that stuff
Yeah.
back in the day. But I got visible. And then when I started, I created a free hour workshop called 7 Steps to Effective Job Hunting, and I went around and gave it to anybody that was interested. And then I said, "Now, if you want me again, you got to pay a little bit." That's how I got to one of my first big clients. Some of my clients I got doing that are still my clients to this day. So,
Wow.
but I was just like, I thought about myself, and the other person I put on my board of directors was me when I was 12 years old because he was really successful. I'm like, well, what, I'm like he, it never occurred to him to win work. He spent all of his energy making it work. I said, well, if you have his nerve and your adult intellect, you'd be able to knock out King Kong with that. So that's what combined it together. So it was all about, how do I do this? I developed very early the mindset that said, I probably have not, I probably have never come up with an original problem that in the history of the world, no one's ever come up with. So there's probably two things that are for sure. Number one, somebody else has had this problem before you and it's been solved. So just go figure out how that was done because you didn't invent. You'll notice a lot of times people will say things like, well, you don't understand. You don't understand my circumstance because my circumstances is incredibly unique. What they really mean is you don't agree with me. That's what they really mean.
Right.
Because I've never heard anybody that we agreed with that said you don't understand me. I've never heard that one. I don't expect to anytime soon either.
Right.
It's like, so that was kind of the process I took, and it was just so much. I was just so into it. I was just so deep, and I got lucky because I married somebody that I don't know if she knew what she was getting into, but I mean she was incredibly supportive. Because I've always operated out of the house. I have an office, since we've had the house. And so, the children grew up with strangers coming in and out of the house and paid no mind to them because the door would be shut and I was in Oz in another world. And that's just what I did. But, I'd be working at 7, 8 o'clock at night if that's what I needed to do because we had two little kids and we were aspiring to poverty. We weren't poor yet. We hoped to be poor someday. We were so poor, but we hoped to be poor. That was our
Yeah.
goal. But it was just like, we were a good team. We were really good. We were a really good team, and I think that's really, really important. I mean, I'm very lucky that way. I mean, This is clearly a case of the JV marrying the varsity. This is clearly way out over my skis here.
Yeah, that's all right, as long as you recognize it, that's
Daily,
important, right?
daily,
Acceptance is
daily. I never forget. But I think all those things. I don't know anybody that's done anything of significance by themselves. I
yeah,
mean,
I agree.
like, well, I'm self-made. Oh, so you like wrote the book you read? Oh, that's interesting. I mean, like, how did that work? I mean, anybody can go back to the people that really support. And I think also getting started a lot of times is really finding out, who your supporters are going to be. And everybody's not going to be supported because they don't have any mind. Like a lot of people look at starting a business as insane.
Yeah,
And it's interesting. I've yet to meet an entrepreneur that has a new reason how they did it. It seems to be the same thing. Well, I had a good idea. I put my nose to the grindstone. I got lucky. And I'm like, no, there can't be one way everything happens. Now, why do I think they did it? Because they don't actually know. It was part skill, part art, and part luck. That's
yeah,
what it was in some combination. And so, they kind of like stuck to it, or they were overcome and learn from mistakes they made, but they just,
sure.
you know,
Well, they made more. I mean, we talked about this a little earlier with success, but like, the one thing I learned probably far later than I wish I learned was that success is not the opposite of failure or vice versa. I've found out again too soon that failure is a part of success, right? And that was a big epiphany for me. Like you have to have failure, you have to stumble,
right,
and it's just like the consistent person technically, or not technically, has a really good chance to win. Doesn't mean they always win,
right,
but if you keep with it long
yeah,
enough, you have a really good opportunity.
right, yeah, yeah. You never got a hit sitting in the dugout, you know. But of
Exactly.
course, you never struck out either. But at a
That's
certain point, I'll say to people, like I'll often tell people, I don't know if you know, but like game on. I mean, this is like the game. It's already started. Like
yeah.
you can't really be in the dugout. You can't. It's kind of hard to just watch your life because you are your life. So it's really important to be able to say, I don't even know. I don't even know like what successful means because I don't know what it means because it means so many things, so many people. I know what effective is. It's doing with your life what you want to do the way you want to do it. And and
Well, I think that's a good point. I think you have to define your own level of success.
yeah,
What is that for
right,
you?
yeah,
And then don't live someone else's level of success
no,
or ideal success for
yeah,
yours.
and a lot so often that's tied into this not enough virus that people have, which is just
Mhm.
it'll eat you up. I was just working with somebody today, and she's got the goal lined up, and I said to her, okay, so one of the rules is if you do six, you're not allowed to say I should have done seven. I mean, I often look at people and I listen to their self talk and I'll say, would you try to motivate another human being that way? No. Why? Because that's not nice, right? that's not that. Stop being mean to yourself. I mean, you're not some axe murderer. Like, just stop.
Yeah,
I could have done better. Okay. That's why they put erasers on pencils. It's okay. All you got to do is get up tomorrow morning, your feet hit the ground, you get a do over. I mean, that's how this thing works. It's not like
yeah,
it's like it's how it works. But this notion of success is so often modeled by things like my net worth is my self worth. You know,
right,
what other people say about me, and social media has become an incredibly addictive platform for that for people.
sure.
They're really difficult. That it wasn't until we got likes that people really started posting so much because it becomes down to, well, what have people said about me? What do they say about me today? Because
Yeah,
if they didn't say that about me, what does that mean I am? And it's like, you got to be able to go up by yourself and have some concept of who that is.
yeah,
You don't want to be. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't matter what people think of us. We certainly have certain people we want to think and speak very highly of us. Where it becomes a problem is when we care more about what other people think of us than we care about what we think of us.
yeah,
Then that's a rough road to go down because oftentimes we look at approval seekers. They're not. I don't think they're really approval seekers. I think they're disapproval avoiders. I think they like approval. I think it's okay, but I think they hate disapproval. The thought
yeah.
of the thought of other people saying negative things about them. And I often say to myself, how important do you think you are? People are talking about you all that much. I mean, like, excuse me, like maybe, something I don't know, but I don't think I'm that big of a, I don't think most people get home within a day. Well, how you doing? Well, let's talk about Michael first and see.
Yeah, exactly.
I think which to me is good news. It's like, relax. They're not looking. It's like,
We're not looking. That's right.
right,
If you stumble
right.
a couple of times, who cares?
Exactly. Yeah.
No one's really looking. Yeah.
When I got in the pool yesterday to swim, the person to the right or left of me, they didn't care how well I was doing. They weren't looking at me. They didn't care. And I really wasn't looking at them either, so it's okay.
Well, and what I love too is like, the eyewitness account is like the least credible source in a courtroom. Like, even if they look, they didn't remember the next day.
Right, exactly.
Like, it's not like they have some memory bank that, they're just pulling up the footage or some shit.
That's a great analogy. It's like a lot of times we rely on like the least credible source. It's like,
Yeah,
do
I
they
mean,
know
seriously.
like anything about you? No. Well, then why do you care? It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
what,
It's a tough thing for us.
and it's really looking to say, so what's really important to me, and what is the price of it? Like so many times, people will not get started because of, I mean, the stories they come up with are just like, they're awesome. It's like, well, what if I do this and they do that? About what? The thing you didn't do? Yeah. Okay, well, what if a tree falls on your head? I mean, like, I mean, look, you gotta get up to bat. I mean, you gotta like, sometimes you go to bed, you got like a bloop single, they count. I mean, you don't have to crush it, but I think really and that kind of stuff is almost always learned behavior. Like that's modeled after somebody somewhere that said something about themselves that we watched, or it's something that happened to us in the way somebody when we were developing reacted to us. Like you don't ever have to get an F as a kid to know that doesn't look like a good idea. Like those kids they don't seem to be having good. We do this interesting thing when children are very very tiny, and like think like when they're starting to walk and they fall down. I mean, what do we say to them?
Get back up.
That's okay.
Again,
That's okay.
it's
We
okay.
don't say, you little loser, crawl till you're 20. I've had it with you. We don't do any
Right.
of that. So what they learn very early on is that failing is a whole part of learning something. And then we do this thing called school.
Yep.
And we get these grades and we learn out, oh no, that kid is not going out for the week. He didn't get to go recess. Why? Because he failed. So we learn to avoid that at all costs. And then depending on sort of the fabric of the family culture we grow up in, it may be even more emphasized about failure. And children aren't paying much attention to what we say, but man, they're watching what we do like a hawk.
Yeah.
And if our words don't match our actions, they're following our actions. I mean, they're like, so if they look at that and if they watch somebody try and succeed, and I mean, when Rachel was about 4, we're sitting downstairs at one of those little tight tables, and I said, Daddy has to stop because Daddy has a client. Because by then they knew clients came. They knew what a client was, but these people called clients. And I said, do you know why Daddy did? And she said, yes, so that we can have money for food and toys. And I said, well, that's one of the reasons Daddy works. It's the main reason. I said, this is Daddy's most favorite way to play.
Hmm.
Like you like the color, I like to go do this because I wanted them to see it very early on that work could be something that could really bring a lot of joy to you.
Yeah.
That you could. I wanted to model that for them, and so did their mother, So they never grew up with parents that didn't like what they did. So they just assumed you get to do what you want to do. It's like so far so good. I mean, none of us are employable. None of us can hold the job. None of us.
Runs in the family.
That virus spread. We had the original pandemic in our house. Okay, it spread to all corners of the house. They're all self-employed, every one of them. So
Well, it kind of summarizes the point, and you kind of mentioned it a couple of times, but like being around the right people. And even if you don't have to have millions of people, it's like if you have one or two or
yes,
a handful of really key people in your life that support you and
yes,
are there for you in the good and bad,
hmm
like that gives you the courage and that gives you the confidence that, I can try this. And
right.
by the way, if I fail, it's okay.
It is okay.
I'm gonna have people there to be their comfort,
Right.
guidance, and what have you, and then I can move on and try it again.
Yeah, and there, there's nothing quite like experiencing whatever you're experiencing, having somebody around you that will just say, "So tell me about that."
Mhm.
Just the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just tell me what that was like for you. Just I mean, somebody just to kind of bear witness to your reality. I mean, it's
Right.
just like that's how we feel really seen because
Mhm.
it's really hard for human beings to differentiate. It's the hardest thing we probably do. It's like that person is so them. God, you know. Well, who
Yeah.
do we want them to be? I don't know. I was thinking like more like a me version of them. I mean, then it'd be like a lot easier. It would be so boring.
Yeah.
It would be fun for like 3 days. I want everybody to like what I like. Okay, that'd be cool for 3 days. And then by day four, it's like, what do you want to do? Whatever you want to do. What do you want to eat? Whatever you want to eat. Where do you want to go? Wherever you want to go. It'd be like so boring. But to have people in our corner there saying, look, and part of the reason when we get started is to kind of line up the support crew. I was lucky because I knew if I had Nancy, I was fine. I had her. We were going to be okay. My wife. We are going to be fine. And so, but to figure out who that is, and to go to people and say, look, this is really important to me. This is really important to me, and then we have to build in, all of the fears it triggers in them.
Yeah.
Some people come from an abundance mentality, and some people come in a scarcity mentality, and they're projecting that, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily about us. I mean, people are afraid we have. I mean, when I started my business, Nancy would say to me, are you going to be making money this month? And I would just say, well, did I make money last month? Well, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'll make money this month. How? Not at the end of the month, and I would just figure it out. You know, when Rachel was born, she decided to stay home and stop working. And she sat me down and she said, I'm not leaving this baby. Can you support us? I said, we're certainly going to find out, aren't we? And let me tell you, I was one focused young man. I was, you know,
I get you motivated quickly.
well, it was a compelling why.
Yeah.
It was
That's
a
true.
compelling why. I mean, I was like, whoa. I mean, if I was running a 10-minute mile, I started running an 8-minute real fast. I mean, I got a little giddy up in my step, So it's really just having that. I mean, it kind of like what we're looking at here is that. So you look at what you want to do, and you have to have the why. And the why, and the more compelling the why is, the more you'll be able to use it when you get stuck. And when you get stuck, you focus on the process and lose sight of an event. An event will always knock you off. That person didn't call me up. That deal fell through. You know, I got hurt doing that exercise. My God, if there was a fourth discipline to what I do call rehab, I'd kill it. I mean, I'm a professional rehabber.
Yeah.
Something. What do I always know? I always recover. I always recover, and so I have that in the bank. So when you look at that and you have this sort of the team has to include you.
Mhm.
You need to be able to be your best cheerleader. You need to be able to be like it's going to be okay. But you need people around you when you feel down and stuck. To just listen. A lot of times we don't need people to tell us what to do. We just want them to listen to us. I mean, we're capable of asking for help, most of us, if we want it.
Yeah.
Is to really, if that's hard, that's another thing to work on. But that's something you share with people. Listen, it's going to be really hard for me to ask for help. I know I need it. So and then tell the person what they can do. So if you could offer sometimes, that would really be helpful. If you could just ask me how I'm doing sometimes, like some specific behavior you really need from them. We're so good at telling people what we don't like, but not really good a lot of times on what we want. You know, I hate when
Yeah.
you do that. What do you want me to do? Not that. Okay, what do you want me to do? If I ask people, 5 things you don't like about something, they can tell me in a minute. 5 things you're like, I gotta think about that a little bit. So like, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you when you get started? What do you need? What do you need? You need time to work on something? Do you need help with something? Like, what do you need? And then tell people around you what the behavior is you want from them. You don't always get it, but I mean, 100% of the shots you don't take don't go in. So I mean, like, I
That's
love
right.
when you don't have what you want because it makes you dangerous. At that point, the worst what happens is will fail. Ain't working anyway now. So like, go for it. So
Michael, that's a great way I think to end our conversation. To have people kind of go figure out what they want
yeah, yeah,
and that'll be a good path
yeah.
forward. So
With the truth is, this is what I want.
yeah.
The truth is.
Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah,
Where
thanks
can
for having
people say
me.
hello to you? Where do you spend the most time online? Where anywhere?
Online. Oh, you pretty much find me Michael at unstucker.com. Of course, what else? I wander around LinkedIn, from time to time. I have my I have my signature talk iron lessons when I talk about my Ironman races for the last 20 years, in which you can learn about life from them. So there's lots of ways to find me and get hold of me. And Michael at unstucker.com is the best way to reach me.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much, and good luck in your Ironman
Thank
coming
you
up.
so much. Okay.